Good morning, everyone. This is Pastor Robert Wilson with God's Way Apostolic Cathedral. Coming to you this morning with our morning sermon. It is called God's Perfect Timing, Part 2. Last time when I spoke on this, I had a testimony I really wanted to give concerning God's perfect timing. It dealt with us being at the hotel in South Carolina. I'm just looking at something. It had to do with us in our going to the hospital. I mean, not the hospital. I'm sorry, to the hotel when we were in South Carolina. And when we got there, the hotel had tried to charge my personal cards. Good morning, love. Try to charge my personal cards for the stay, which was being paid for by the company that I work for. And I was trying to figure out, because first he just sit there and said the card rejected. I'm like, how in the world would the company card reject? But anyway, we had to go through some hustle tussle trying to get the room reserved, or I should say paid for in a sense. And then there was a gentleman that I heard him talking to on the phone about his room not being ready. And they were going back and forth with him about getting his room together. And so by the time we finished all of that, uh, thank you. By the time we finished all of that, the gentleman actually had came down the stairs to try to get his room, and they just got his room fixed, and we got our room, together. So I went and got the little cart to help bring the bags into the room, and the gentleman told me that works there, oh, the elevator's out, and we on the fourth floor, and it's like, wow. So we ended up having to carry the bags up the stairs. But talking about perfect timing, God's perfect timing. Yes, I brought the gentleman up for a reason, because as we were going upstairs, went down to the back to go up the stairs, he just happened to be going up the stairs at the exact same time. He saw what we had and he said, no, I'll help you guys. Matter of fact, he took the suitcase. I was going to carry both suitcases, but he took one of the suitcases he thought my wife was going to carry, and he carried them up the 4 flights of steps for us. We're talking about God's perfect timing, because if he wasn't there, yes, and it may be something that people may consider, oh, that's nothing. No, it is something. Walking up 4 flights of steps with 2 suitcases and a bunch of bags is a chore. I mean, we don't even walk upstairs now. That's why we use the elevator as much as we do. I'm talking about everybody, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people use the elevators. But I thank God for that. But that wasn't the only time that gentleman happened to cross our path. We went to the store because I prefer to cook when I'm out there over the road like this, when I got a hotel and a stove, stuff like that, than to be eating out at the fast food joints, because we all know we don't know what we're really getting when we eat fast foods. We just take it that it is what they say it is. And we went to the store and we grabbed some food. And when we came back again, we had a bunch of little bags. And guess who we saw? The same gentleman. He opened the door, he held the door for us. And, he helped us again by being there when we needed, because I was looking to put my bags down so I can open the door and hold the door open for Pastor A. But of course, God took care of that for me. So when we look at perfect timing, God's perfect timing, it is going to benefit you the most when it is time to happen. In my text for today, God's perfect timing too, is Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God worked for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And I know that we sometimes ask, what is my purpose? What is my purpose in life? Why is it that God placed me here? I know some people go around searching for what is my purpose? Why was I born? And things along that line. And it's interesting because the people that I'm looking at today, my cloud witnesses today, is actually Moses and Joseph. And when we look at God's timing and placing them in the world, and their purpose in the world was for them to save others. That's exactly what it was. It was to save others. They weren't placed on this planet just for themselves. No, God placed them on this planet to save others. And I'm going to look at what happens if the timing of the events that happened in their life didn't go on like it did. What if that happened? What would have happened then? So let's get into the story of Moses being found in the book of Exodus. And he was born at a time where the was it the Pharaoh? I'm talking, yeah, Egypt. He was born, where he got mad about the fact that the Egyptians, I mean, the Israelites were growing in numbers, and he felt that they were stronger than them and they were more than them, and he became afraid. This is the story of Exodus, and he decided to put this decree out where he wanted to kill all of the Hebrew boys being born. You can let the girls stay, but the boys, I want you to kill them, right? And he reached out to some Hebrew midwives, but they were right with God and they chose not to do it. But again, his whole thing was to steal, I'm talking about the Pharaoh, was to kill the Hebrew boys. Now, looking back at that in our time, I was like, oh no, I would never want to be born in that era. We can even look at when blacks here in the country or Africans here in this country went through slavery, the slavery times, and what we learned about the history of slavery. Say, oh no, God, I would never want to be born at that time. I don't think I could deal with that. And that's why you weren't. That's the honest God. That's why you weren't. God knew you were not strong enough to deal with the things that was going on at that time. And so he had you come into the planet, this world, at the time that you are here now. But just go back to Moses. So they have this turmoil. His life is threatened before he's even born because they had the decree to get rid of him and kill him as a baby. And so he sits there and he comes out, and his mama has her, Jochebed. She had her baby and she tried to keep her baby quiet because, you know, babies cry and they make noise and all this other thing. But she hid him for 3 months. Why? Because God needed Moses to deliver the people, right? To save the others. And so she was able to keep him hidden from those who were enforcing the decree to kill the Hebrew boys. And then she got to the point where she could no longer hide him. She knew that she had to have some other plan so that her son may live. Now, she didn't know about God's divine plan for his life. She just was doing it as a natural a mother would do. She wanted to preserve her son's life. She wanted to keep her son alive. And so she sit there and she put together this little basket, made out of reed, and put it in the water. And when she placed it in the water, she walked away. The Bible says she basically walked away and left it. But the timing of this next event, what happened was Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, came down to the water and she was bathing, and then she heard the baby crying, and she sent her maids over there and she saw that that was a baby, and she wanted to keep him. She basically adopted Moses right then and there. He never named, the Bible didn't say he had a name, but we call him Moses because that's what he was, who he was. And she decided she wanted to keep him. His sister, Miriam, was watching, timing. See, what happens, it will only finish. So her sister Miriam came there and she said, well, would you like me to get a Hebrew midwife or mother to come and care for the baby, nursing the baby for you? And she said, yes. And so, of course, Miriam went and grabbed her mother. And in this whole case, Moses was allowed to still grow up in his Hebrew heritage and learn about his Hebrew heritage, and to a point where he was then adopted and went into the Egyptian part of his life, into the palace, and he learned about the Egyptian culture and how things ran that way, which was very important in his growth for the mission that God had him for. But what if she didn't come? What if she didn't come out there to bathe? The princess didn't come out there to bathe at that moment. What would have happened? Well, he could have still been out there crying. He possibly could have even died in the water, or maybe somebody else who didn't have that clout or whatever could have came over there and adopted him, and he could have never received the training that he needed to fulfill the mission that God had for him. Maybe what happened if Pharaoh never put the decree out? Once again, he would have never received what it is that he needed to fulfill the mission that God had. Well, is this ideal? Well, of course, in most of our cases, we say no. A lot of people wants to know if their parents put them up for adoption, who was their biological parent? Why did they do these things to me? Not understanding that God has a better purpose for you, knowing that they possibly could not give you what you need to fulfill the assignment that God has given you. If you think about it, if he doesn't get these training, if he doesn't go to the palace, if he doesn't learn about Egyptian culture, is he prepared to do the task? Of course not. He's not. It's just like when you go to a job and you never even took classes to learn about the job, but you lied, because that was a big thing at one point. People would lie on their resume and create these false narratives, and then they can go online and research and try to learn how to do these things, these tasks. But then when they get to the job, they're ill prepared, because in real life, things really do go different. And if you're just I'm not used to how to do things outside of the scope of what you learned, Matthew Pastor and myself was talking about, you get that OJT, that on the job training, but the place that you're going to work for may not be looking for no on the job training. They're looking for an experienced person who can handle when these hard situations come up and they've already dealt with them in their lives. See, Moses had already knew how to deal with a Pharaoh. Why? Because technically his stepdad was a Pharaoh, because he was adopted by the princess. So he's living in the castle and he's learning how he deals with daily tasks, daily procedures in the lives of the Egyptians. He knew this, right? Because he had been exposed to it. In our lives, when God takes us out and he puts us in certain situations, and it may not be ideal, and a lot of times it is not an ideal place to be, we sit there and have a choice. We can sit there and embrace the fact that God has taken us out of our comfort zone. God has taken us out of a situation or a place where it's not going to help us grow to become better people or worthy workers or soldiers. I'm sorry, my eyes itchy. For God, we sit there and say, I want to go back. I want to go back to where I was. I want to go back and live in the house that I lived in. I want to go back and be in the city that I was in, or the town that I was in, or even the state that I was in. I want to go back there. Why? Because I'm more comfortable there. But God has a better calling for you. And we sit there and we say no, and we do not receive what it is that God has for us, because we have made a choice to go back to being comfortable than to be uncomfortable. See, in the case of Moses, after he had grown up and he was exposed to the Egyptian culture, he still held on to his Hebrew culture. And he saw an Egyptian man beating up a Hebrew man, and he got mad and he attacked that guy and he killed that guy and he buried his body in the sand. And now he's afraid. Why? Because he knows that he, as a Hebrew, in his heart, he knew he was a Hebrew. That was a crime, a major crime, not just because he killed the man, because he killed an Egyptian. And the Hebrew people at this time were what? They were slaves. They were still slaves. And we know how that works. Slaves should not kill the regular citizens or their masters. That's just how that went. And so he went back. He was afraid that somebody saw, but he didn't see anybody when he committed this act. And then he went out the next day and he saw two Hebrew men fighting. And when he saw the two Hebrew men fighting, he tried to break them up and say, why are you brothers fighting amongst each other? And one of the Hebrew men said to him, whoa, who made you our judge and jury along that line? And he said, what if we don't obey you? What you going to do? Kill us like you killed the Egyptian? And it sent so much panic into Moses. But again, we're talking God's timing, right? Because guess what that made him do? It made him run. He fled. Why? Because he was afraid that Pharaoh would kill him. And the Bible says Pharaoh was looking to kill him for that. And so he ran out into the desert. This is the time where his character now is going to be developed. This is the time where God is truly preparing him for the mission, the assignment that God had placed on him. Now, when you think about it, he's living in the palace to now living in a desert. He could have anything he wanted in the palace, but now he got to scrounge and work for things in the desert. But God is preparing him what? For the assignment that he had. Is this an ideal scenario or situation? The answer to the question is no. We're talking about palace living. where everything is given to you, like the White House or the castle for over in Europe, or even any kings in Africa and stuff like that, where everybody's waiting on you hand and foot. And now all of a sudden you got to work for what it is that you want. You got to work for whatever it is that you need, right? And now life is different. But why is God placing us through this? Because he wants to change and develop your character. He wants to give you the strength and the wisdom to complete the assignment that he has placed on you. But if you turn your back, if you say, no, I don't want to be here. No, I want to go back, right? Well, if he went back, I'm telling you, he would have got killed, because the Bible says Pharaoh was looking to kill him, right? He could have been living like a fugitive, hiding amongst the people, the Hebrew people back in Egypt. But no, he went on and fulfilled what God had him do, and he became a shepherd. And you know that a shepherd is someone that is placed over who? A flock of the animals, sheep, cows, oxen, whatever, goats, whatever it is. But that's what the shepherd, he's looking out for them. Now, he didn't know when he got this assignment, this job as being a shepherd, that he was going to be a shepherd over people. He just knew that he had to be shepherd over the sheep. And one of them became lost, and he's up in the mountains, and God speaks out to him, and God relaxes him, and God tells him that he has this assignment for him, and he doubts it. Yes, he doubts it, because it is a major assignment. I said earlier that the people that I'm talking about, their mission was to save others. And we all have a mission to help save others. But he had to go save a whole nation of people that was oppressed by another nation of people. And he knew that in the kingdom or the palace where Pharaoh lived, Pharaoh considered himself a god. And how was he going to go as a lowly shepherd, as a truly a slave, to go back and face a god, technically a little g god, a king, and tell him God said, let his people go? He said, who am I? Basically, I don't have no clout. But see, that's the same thing we got to look at when God is telling us to do things. Who am I? I am someone who has been called by the great one and only true living God, and he has qualified me. Why? Because I have been through some tests. I have been through some trials. I have kept the faith, and God has called me to come out to go help someone. And you have to look at it that way. Excuse me. Because we all have a purpose. We all have a purpose here. Whether we fulfill it or not, we all have a purpose. And we can't let the fact that we have tests and trials come our way to allow us to not fulfill our purpose. Because the one thing I know I hear so much is I want to see God's blessing in my life. I want to see God's blessing in my life. That's like saying if you're going to school, I want to see an A, but I don't do any of the homework. I don't do any of the assignments, right? I just want to see the A. Well, I can put an A on the board for you right then and there. Put the A on the board, and guess what? You saw the A. But now I want to get an A on my, as a grade that I earned, then you're going to have to put in the work. You want to see God's blessing. No, we don't work for blessings, but God has assignments for us to do, to fulfill. And what I say, it helps elevate you to that plateau where that blessing is, right? See, because when you first came into God, God had you, you came and you received God's spirit prayerfully, you received God's spirit, and you came into it and you received what God had for you right there. But now God wants to elevate you. And when he elevates you up to the next plateau, what happens is there are more blessings that you're going to see when you get to that plateau. But the problem is some of us get so comfortable right here where we first came in, and we refuse to elevate up to the next level. But yet we keep crying, I want to see God's blessing. I want what God has for me. But yet I'm not willing to elevate myself up to that next plateau where God has more blessings for me. And that's where problems kick in. That's why we tend to sit there and be stagnated. But unlike Moses, who, even though he didn't feel like he was qualified to lead God's people or to go speak to Pharaoh, good morning, Sister Toy, to go speak to Pharaoh, he still did it. Why? Because he had faith in God. He trusted in what God had for him to do. And God even gave him some other help, which is in case was Aaron. Even though Moses had a stuttering problem and he didn't feel like he was eloquent in speaking, God gave him a mouthpiece. And a lot of us definitely feel that way, that we are not eloquent enough, or we don't speak well enough to do a lot of different things. I don't worry about if I'm charismatic. If you like the fact that I'm not going to be a hooper or a hollower when I teach or preach, I don't care anything about that. That's not what God called me to do. God called me to teach you his word, and to teach it in a way that you understand it and hopefully apply it to your life. That's my calling. Then my next person that I brought up in my studies was Joseph. And remember, as I kind of go past Moses, Moses was successful in what God called him to do, even though he didn't feel like he was qualified, but God prepared him. Because remember, God spared his life. Why? Because he had a divine plan for him, just like he has a divine plan for you. God had Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, take him into the palace. Why? Because God needed him to be exposed to palace life, to be exposed to the Pharaoh, to understand how to deal with him on that level. And God will place you and put you in places that's just right for what you need to do for your calling, to deal with the people who are going to be in that same kind of arena that God had placed you in. That's what we need to look at as we go through these journeys and wonder why it is that God has placed me here, or why did I go through this, or why did I go through that? That's in the case of Moses. Joseph was already favored by his daddy, found in the book of Genesis. He was favored, and in his being favored, God had a calling on his life. And again, it was to help save others. And Joseph sat there, and knowing that he was daddy's favorite, God blessed him with a dream. And the dream told him that basically they were going to bow down and to you as a leader or someone above them, talking about his family. Now, being the youngest, and if you understand their culture, the youngest is basically a nobody. I mean, sometimes we treat the youngest like a nobody. The youngest that I know have all been bossy, though. I don't care, male or female. The youngest child has always seemed to be so bossy. They want to prove themselves that they're not somebody you can just walk on, that their opinion count, that it matters. See, I'm not a baby child. I'm more of I'm the oldest son, but I'm the third out of 10. So, but anyway, but that baby child, they like to prove that they got worth. My own baby does it. I laugh so much at that. But anyway, Joseph angered his brothers because first of all, he was favored. And then he told his brother that y'all are going to actually, okay, so Joy, I'm laughing at that. But he told them that they actually were going to be subservient to him, which was not the way of the culture. That's, again, saying the way that things are, the way our society is. That's not the way things work, right? And so that made them mad, and especially knowing that daddy favored them, right? And so one day daddy sent him out, Joseph, to go check on his brothers. This is a timing thing now, y'all. Perfectly timing thing. He sent them out to go check. The brothers caught him out there by themselves, and they beat him up. They really wanted to kill him, but Reuben, I'm more certain, said no. He didn't want him to kill, and they went back. They tore up his favorite, because he had on his little favorite jacket that daddy gave him. That was a sign. Okay, Pastor A. About to be in the bossy thing. But and they figured that they were smeared to tell daddy that he was killed by a wild beast. But the fact that the one brother said no, not to kill him, and they saw a caravan going by, and they sold Joseph into slavery. The caravan had to be passing by at that time, because if not, some other plan would have had to been developed. And that caravan is what got Joseph to Potiphar's house. See, he was sold to them. They in turn sold him as a slave to Potiphar. If he doesn't get there, we're looking at a different scenario, right? And so he goes to Potiphar's house and he does his thing, and Miss Potiphar finds him attractive and she wants him to lay with her and things along that line, but he refuses. And then what does she do? She cries rape, and she gets him thrown into prison. Hold on again. she gets him thrown into prison, which is a place that he needed to be. He had to go to prison at this time, the perfect time. Why? Because when he went to prison at this time, he met who? The cupbearer and the baker. If he had went to prison probably before, he probably never come across the cupbearer or the baker. Or if he goes to prison at a later time, he probably doesn't come across the cupbearer and the baker, right? So while he's in prison again, he continues doing his thing. Why do I know that? Because when he went to Potiphar's house, he worked to a point where they elevated him in position. He became like in charge. He was a top person in that spot. And then when he went to prison, the prison says the same thing. He worked to the point where he was basically put in charge of the prison. So he's always had a leadership position. Whether it was as a slave, whether it was as a prisoner, he had leadership qualities, and he showed it to the point in very not desirable positions. He showed it, and guess what? He still, his skills, he was elevated. Even in or not ideal situations, he still was elevated because he continued to be who God called him to be. 2 years after he translate the dreams of the cupbearer and the baker, the Pharaoh has a bad dream and nobody can interpret it. And the cupbearer remembers about Joseph some 2 years later, even though he said he was going to remember about him when he got out of prison. And see, that's the thing you got to understand. Blessings don't always happen right then and there. He did something good for them, and you say, well, I'm doing something good, God gonna bless me right away. No, it didn't happen right away. It took 2 years for this to happen. And the cupbearer told Pharaoh about Joseph. And Joseph was brought out of prison and he interpreted the dream. You remember I said that these two people that I'm talking about was placed here to help others, to save others. In the dream, he told Pharaoh that you're going to have 7 good years and 7 bad years. And he said, what you're going to need is to put away some provisions in the good time. And that's something we all should practice, honestly. It'll help us when bad times do come. It's the saving aspect. Put away some of in the bountiful years, put it away, store it. So when the bad years come, we will still have provisions. And Pharaoh thought that was such a great idea that he actually made Joseph second in command. See, throughout this whole thing, even though he was the baby and even though he was supposed to basically be nothing in cultural sites because they should have went to the oldest brother and then the next brother down the line, and I think there's 12 of them, and Joseph falls somewhere down, maybe 9, 10, somewhere down that line, right? So by the time he ever see anything, he'd probably be old, dead, and gone because of the cultural stance. But the way God says, the way society says things should go, God says, no, I have a divine plan for you. And in this divine plan, just like in your dreams, you are going to have them bow down to you. Because even though you may be one of the youngest, I got you because you're qualified to do what I need you to do at this point. And we don't know what God has called you to do. We don't know what assignment God has given you that only you can fulfill. But if you sit there and say no, see, when Joseph got to Potiphar, Joseph could have stood up there and tried to escape and get back home, but he didn't. The Bible didn't say that. He said he could work to the point where he was basically placed second in command, in charge of the house, right? Because he continued doing what God had called him to do, in spite of it not being the ideal situation, the ideal scenario. You know, we're always wanting everything to be so perfect for us in what we do, where we go, how we look. It has to fit who's liking my liking. If it doesn't fit my liking, I'm basically not going to do it. But God has such a tremendous plan for every last one of us. He does. I was telling someone one time, matter of fact, it was my cousin, that his experience in life actually opens the door for him to have a ministry that I could probably never be as effective in it as because he actually went through it. And it works with everybody else. God has put you through certain scenario situations where we can talk about it, but you've been through it. You can sit there and say, oh no, this is what I done when I went through this. This is what I've done when I went through this, and so on and so on. And I can sit there and talk about what I know about it from afar and what I know that it says it can happen to you if you go through this or you go through that, right? But God, like I said, has placed us all in positions where we can be so beneficial to help others, the assignment that God has given us. But because it doesn't fit our own narrative of what we think life should be, what we feel how things should go, we ourselves sabotage our own blessing. Because remember earlier, I talked about when God elevates us. See, when God elevates us, it is taking us higher in him and we're receiving more blessings. But because we say, oh, no, I don't like heights. I can't go up there. I don't want to do that. I don't speak well. I don't talk well. I don't dress well. I don't do whatever well. I'm shy. I can't talk to people. Whatever the case may be, we fall back down. But then we get on our knees or in our closet, so we pray, God, take me, elevate me, give me this, give me that, give me this, right? But God says, I'm trying to give it to you, but you keep rejecting the plan. You keep rejecting the path. You keep not wanting to climb the steps that you need to do to receive it. And then you keep on saying, I wonder why God is not blessing me the way I see. Hold on one second. Why God is not blessing me the way I keep asking. He said he would give me the desires of my heart. And he keeps telling you, I am giving you the desires of your heart. But you keep rejecting the plan that I have placed before you. Think about it if Joseph had rejected the plan. Think about it if Miss Pharaoh or Potiphar didn't desire Joseph. He would have never met the cupbearers. And if he never meets the cupbearers, guess what? He never goes. That means he never went to prison and he never meets Pharaoh. Pharaoh would never know anything about Joseph. That means that they would have had the 7 years of bountiful, and then they would have had the 7 years of famine, and a whole lot of people would have just died, including Joseph's family. People would have just died. But no, he stood the course. He stood on the course. He followed what God had him to do, even though it wasn't ideal. It's what I want you to understand. It may not always be ideal. And you cannot say Joseph did not feel pain. You cannot say Joseph was not hurt and crying because of the fact that his brothers treated him that way. They beat him up. Who do you know get beat up and don't feel pain? Who do you know gets betrayed by their family members? Someone they love, someone they look up to, they idolize, or even close to, and they turn their backs on you and they don't feel pain in their heart. They all of a sudden be falsely accused of something, and now you sitting in prison. Come on now. That's pain, human natural emotions that we all go through. And so, but he had to go through these because now he's elevated again to be second in control of all of Egypt. He was able to save not only his family, but all the Israelites and the Egyptians because God had a divine plan for him. And then in your world, you don't know what the divine plan is because we know Joseph didn't know that was the way God had things going for him. We know Moses didn't know that was the way God had things going for them. But we do know this, that they followed the course. They stayed obedient. They stayed faithful. They went through the tests and the trials. They went through the pains, the sorrows, the anger, the happiness, all of it. They went through it all so that they could receive what God had for them at the end. And we must understand we must also do the same thing if we want to see God's blessing in our lives. But, I know we're all different. And Pastor Robert, it's easy for you to say things like that. You don't know what I go through. No, I don't know what you go through, but I do know the God who brought them through. And I know for a fact, I have not read a story where somebody haven't went through something worse than what most of us have ever went through. And we always know Brother Job went through probably one of the worst set of events in the Bible of anybody's life, as far as I'm concerned, losing children, losing wealth, losing property, losing health, all of those things. And yet you still trusting and believing that God is going to deliver you. Please, we lose a child. Most of us lose our mind. And then we go into some funks and things like that, and we never bounce back. Some of us do. Some of us just never bounce back. And now you lose your job. Some of us commit suicide because we lose our job. We lose our health. Yeah, we can't deal with it because we're not as spiritually strong as some of the others. But that's okay. We can get there. It's not over yet. One more thing, and then I'm calling it a day. I actually have to travel again. I'm heading back out to South Carolina. Do thank the Lord for this opportunity about a month ago, a little over a month ago now. If you would ask me, Pastor Robert, what your work wise, what would you be doing? And I'd say I'd be still teaching students how to get their CDL. Well, God is actually taking me, in a sense, out of that. I'm no longer actually truly teaching students. I will be coming up this week, but the past month I haven't been doing that. I've been actually helping other directors become better at being directors. So as Pastor A and myself say, I've been training the trainers. That's what God has basically elevated me to do. I work still for the same company. And like I said, I get to travel. I'm getting ready to travel now. And I'm asking for prayer for traveling mercies, and that, whatever God has for me and my family, my wife, my world, that we will elevate ourselves to receive it. Like I said, is it what I thought I would be doing a month ago? No, it's not. Is it me being home every night in my own bed? No, it's not. It's not. But it is where God wants me to be. Why? Because I know that I get a chance to affect people, not just as Robert, the director, or whatever title I got, but as Robert, the man of God, and Robert, the person, the regular person. And people do appreciate the fact that I'm there. I like to make folks laugh, but I'm also a stickler for the rules. So it's a great combo for me. And I do thank God for the opportunity. Even if it doesn't last, I still thank God for the opportunity, because it really shows the gift that God has given me as far as a teacher and a leader, in a sense that it's not just something that maybe Pastor A saw in me, or anybody who was really close saw in me, but people who don't really know me get a chance to see in me that I have these gifts that God has given. And like I said, now they're putting them to use. But I want to say happy birthday to all of those who have birthdays out in this month. Enjoy yourself, enjoy your special day. The one thing I'm always saying, please don't turn it up to the point where it becomes a dreadful day. So keep it a special day, enjoy it, keep everything in moderation except for the love. And anyone who's sick, we're praying for all of those. Thank you, Sister Toy. Praying for all of those that are going through any kind of issues, whether it's physical issues, mental issues, emotional issues, any of those things that's going on out there that really does tear us apart. From all my brothers out there, we are doing the Kingdom Men series, even though that actually has pulled me away from that too. On Wednesdays on the Model Prayer Ministry line. They do actually have it on Facebook too. We don't broadcast that, but we have had such a wonderful, wonderful time on the Kingdom Men series on that prayer line. We do not 100% follow Dr. Evans' book. We go where the Spirit leads, in a sense, and we have some great conversations. And one of the reasons why I brought it, because a friend of mine had sent me a message about mental health, and men need to understand we come together as men to help men, right? That's what our whole purpose is. And no one man can do it all by himself. And no one man is so hard that he don't have emotions, because God gave you an emotion. You may try to deaden it, but you have emotions, you have feelings. And it's not a bad thing to sit there and express yourself as to why I'm like I am and what can help me become better. And we always agree, it is God. It is God that helps us become better men. We have to understand our role as a kingdom man, as a Christian kingdom man. What is our role? What is our responsibility? What has God made us accountable for in this? And so I'm still talking about the Kingdom Man series in a sense. Again, it's on the Model Prayer Ministry. They have a Zoom line. We do this every Wednesday. It is at 6:30 Pacific time, 9:30 Eastern time. And if you fall in between, then that's where you will get your timeline. But it's either 9:30 Eastern or 6:30 Pacific. And we do have some wonderful conversations. And then when they do the general line, they have wonderful dynamic speakers. Pastor A is on there. I'm on there. Mother Owens, our sister, she's on there. Evangelist Day, the Bullens, Dr. Bullens, Deacon Bullens. I say Evangelist Day, Sister Keisha, and then they have a whole lot of stuff for spiritual growth, though. We do. There's so much stuff. And if you're looking for something to help you along the side when things are getting tough and you can't go to your own ministry, don't have a ministry, whatever the case may be, God's way is still here. We do still do prayer. We do everything. We're just branching out to become where we can reach more people than what we currently reach now. Amen. But with that being said, everyone have a beautiful and blessed Sunday. Stay safe out there. Do something, say something. This is what Deacon Bullets like to say something, do something, wear something that will have someone come and start a conversation and ask you, who is this Jesus and how do I get to know him? Yes, the Deacon Bullets, if you listen to it, I have said it. But anyway, it is a beautiful saying. And yes, you do want to draw others unto Christ. Amen. Love you all. Have a blessed day. If you have any prayer requests, please put them in. We do, like I said, we call out prayer requests all the time. And we are praying for you all. Love you. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.